First off, a little description. I'm a 27, almost 28, female from southern Wisconsin. A little less than 6 years ago, starting late 2010, I had completed and received my high school equivalency diploma, and not even a month later, I attended the community college I had received said diploma from. I didn't then, and still don't have my license, so my mom's boyfriend would take me to school in the mornings, on his way to work. Another family member would pick me up to take me home. Sometimes I had just daytime classes, other times I had evening and night classes, and sometimes I had both. On this particular day, I had an evening class on a Friday and got out just as the campus was closing. My cousin offered to pick me up this evening, but she was taking a while, which didn't bother me. She worked long hours and on top of it, had a toddler to take care of, so I understood. But this is when things turned a bit creepy. As the sun was setting, I remember waiting by the front doors for my cousin to arrive. There's a small walkway about 15 feet long and about 4 feet wide. I was waiting at the end of the walkway, not even a step between there and the parking lot, when a man who I'd previously seen as the campus janitor came through the double doors. I don't remember exactly what he looked like, other than that he was an older man. Thin and average height, with gray hair. That's all I really remember about him. I think he may have been wearing some kind of baseball cap too. Again, some of the smaller details are a little fuzzy. Anyway, he started up small talk, which I didn't mind. It was nice to have someone to talk to while I waited for my cousin. On top of this, he kept his distance, which I appreciated since I'm somewhat shy and timid. I must admit, though, that unlike a lot of girls who post these kinds of stories, I'm not really attractive at all. Average at best. I'm a little bit overweight, more so then than I am now, with a somewhat average face. However, as the minutes passed, he slowly inched closer to me, and his questions became more personal and invasive. I don't remember them all, but I do remember him asking things like where I lived, if I had a boyfriend, where my cousin was coming from, and when she was supposed to pick me up. My own answers became short and to the point. This was my polite and small way of showing this guy that he was making me uncomfortable, and that I wanted to be left alone now, but I didn't have it in me to be blunt or impolite. After a few more minutes passed, he disappeared back into the campus, and I breathed a sigh of relief, thinking the encounter was over, and hoping more than ever to see my cousin's truck. All was good, until about 10 minutes later, when a blood-red truck showed up. Thinking this was my cousin, who has a similar looking truck, I took a few steps forward, but stopped suddenly when I saw who was sitting in the driver's side through the window. You guessed it. He pulled down the passenger side window, and I remember him making a small joke about me getting into his truck with him. A few more things were said on his end, but then something came out of his mouth that really pissed me off, but scared the shit out of me as well.
Well, I guess your cousin's not coming after all.
Or something along those lines. I knew what he was insinuating, but I would have never gotten into the truck with him. I didn't care if I had to camp out on campus. It wasn't going to happen. What scared me the most, though, was the thought of this encounter turning really ugly and being forced into this creep's truck. Luckily for me, 2 teenagers had just shown up and were making their way through the college's parking lot. They seemed to be just on a small evening stroll through the country, where the campus was located at. I saw the janitor tense up and yell,
"Oh, I'll be right back,"
and sped off. Before I knew it, he was gone. And this fact solidified in my mind that he was up to no good, that something creepy was dancing through his mind, that his intentions regarding me and the fact that we were seemingly alone were not innocent or helpful. About 10 or 15 minutes later, my cousin finally showed up, and I had a nice, peaceful ride back home. I didn't tell her or my mom, who I was still living with while I went to school. I was afraid my mom would make going to college more complicated for me, and I have to say that aside from this encounter, I loved college. I still miss it. I actually miss doing homework. Sleepless nights writing papers and reading textbooks. I wish I could afford to go back, honestly. Anyway, I ended up graduating with an associate's degree in business management, spring of 2012, and it felt like such a great accomplishment to me. I also never had any more encounters with the janitor. He never talked to me again, but I would still tense up every now and then when I'd see him around, especially just after the encounter. With that all said, thank you to the teenagers who were on an evening stroll through the country. You possibly saved me from being raped or even murdered and left in a ditch somewhere in the middle of nowhere. I've had a lot of creepy and spooky experiences in my time thus far, but here's the one that sticks with me the most. I was about 12 years old, and my school wasn't very far from where I lived. I had always taken the bus home from school when no one was available to pick me up. I guess my mother thought I was old enough to start letting me walk home with other kids in my class, as we all lived pretty close to one another. On this particular day, I was walking alone. I don't remember why exactly, or if my mom knew I had been walking alone sometimes. I had crossed the busy intersection at the lights and was starting on down the sidewalk. This was a very busy street in my city, so there was always a lot of traffic passing by. This one car had stopped at the curb, with no turning indicator on or four-ways on, so it was odd that he had just stopped there, especially since it was such a busy road and was only in one lane in each direction. He was causing a bit of a traffic backup. As I got closer to the car, I felt a little sketched out about it, because my mother had raised me knowing that there were strange people in the world and to always be cautious. Up until this point, I had never really experienced anything like this. I finally got to the point where I was standing beside the car. I didn't stop to look. However, I did glimpse into the window as I was passing by to see what the hell this guy was doing. And this guy had his hands down his pants and was stroking himself, his head back and his eyes shut. I didn't fully understand it then, but I knew that it wasn't right or normal. I started to run because it freaked me out, and I felt almost like I had done something wrong because I had glimpsed at him. As I was running, the same car pulled up beside me again. He slowed down to a crawl so he could keep up with me, and he had the passenger window rolled down. I looked at him in horror, my eyes wide with fear, and I was panicking. He was just smiling this creepy-ass smile at me, and then he started laughing. He had one hand on the steering wheel, and the other was still down his pants. I booked it so fast that I felt like my chest was going to explode. I ended up turning down an alley way onto the street beside it so I could lose this guy. I heard his tires squeal as he sped off. When I came out of the alley onto the next street, just as I was about to get to the next alley, I saw the same car coming around the corner, slowly, as if he was looking for me. The entire rest of the way home, I kept looking over my shoulder while power walking to get home as fast as I could. It couldn't have been more than 20 minutes that this whole ordeal went on, but it felt like 20 hours to me. I never told my mother about this incident because I was scared and somewhat ashamed about what I had seen. I almost felt as if I had done something wrong. When this took place, I was a small 5'2", 110-pound, 12 to 13-year-old female. It was the first year of my parents' divorce, and my 2 older sisters and I had gone to Oxford, PA to see my mother for her birthday. We all had a great time, and we were all dressed up as best as we could to make my mother happy because she was one of those people who hated her birthday. It had gotten late, around 2 a.m., and her boyfriend, we'll call him Jay, wanted to go to the convenience store a few blocks away to get a candy bar and some soda. I've never been one to get tired until 4 or 5 a.m., so I asked my mother and him if it would be okay for me to tag along with him. And they said it was fine, and I put my mother's work boots on because my flats had worn sores into the back of my heels. And they were very big on me, and Jay laughed as I clomped about in them, clumsily tripping all the way to the store. As we got there, I noticed a very tall blonde man staring at me as I walked through the door. As I glanced around, I noticed he was following me, turning his head to watch me walk around until we got in line. He immediately jumped in line behind us, and I mean right behind us. He was so close behind me that just shifting my weight would cause me to bump into him. I could tell just how tall he really was. He towered over me and Jay. Now, I should say that Jay was 6'1", so he wasn't a short man in any sense, and he definitely wasn't a scrawny one either. But this stranger had 4 or 5 inches on Jay still. I snuck a peek over my shoulder, and he was still staring at me. His face was sunken in, and looked scarred from acne, but I couldn't really tell because I was trying to look nonchalantly. As I tried to sneak a better look at this man, I remember wondering what he was doped up on. I knew he had to have been on something, because his eyes were a dull blue-gray, and he just had that glassy, far-away look about him. He was creeping me out, so I nudged Jay and whispered to him what was going on. He quietly told me not to look at him, and after we paid and left the store, he told me to get ready to either run home or back into the store, because the streets were dead, so there was no other safety to run to. I was shaking, because I kept thinking about how I could hardly walk in these boots. How would I be able to run? Would I just have to jump out of them and make a break for it barefoot if it came to it? In the 10 seconds it had taken us to exit the store and make it to the sidewalk on the street beside the store, the man came out after us. He had nothing in his hands, leading us to believe that he hadn't even bought anything. He hopped in a car that was waiting in front of the store, and they peeled out onto the street me and Jay were now on. Now I should tell you, we didn't take a main street. This was a darker side street. It was a shortcut home. They watched us take this street and followed us, stopping the car a few feet ahead of us. The man began to open the passenger side door. Jay pushed me back to run and pulled his hunting knife from his leather jacket. Upon seeing it, the man quickly retreated, slamming the door shut and the driver quickly speeding off. We made it home, not telling my mother what had just happened. I was afraid she'd never let me out of the house again. Jay had saved my life. Who knows what would have happened if he wasn't there to rescue me? Who knows what would have happened if I hadn't noticed the man and had not been able to bring it to Jay's attention? I'm 21 years old now, and after that night, I always carry a knife on me. This happened about 2 months ago. Some important background information is that I'm currently a sophomore. The new freshmen have been bullying each other all year and have gotten into several fights. 3 of them were in my lunch period. In my lunch period, there are a group of freshman boys that sit right next to my table. I was in Global, and our classes started presenting our World War II projects. At about 7:45, we got put into a shelter in place. This is when you lock down the classroom door and keep doing your classwork, but no one can leave or enter. We kept presenting until about 8, when one of the office staff knocks on the door for a person we'll call Jay. He came back in about 5 minutes later, and he wouldn't say why they had talked to him. We finally got out of class at 9. Fast forward to the 6th period. There was a substitute teacher. At first, I thought nothing of it. I started talking with my friend, who told me what had happened. The rumor was a freshman who was in both my friend's and my lunch brought a gun to school. I should mention that he sits at the table next to mine. They got a report when a girl heard a friend say that a freshman named Jay had a gun in his bag. Apparently, he was going to shoot up the lunchroom, then kill himself. The motive was that he was being bullied for being gay, so the cops were called, and since they had the name of Jay, they went to detain him in first period. At the time, he was in a Spanish classroom. After my friend told me this, our actual Spanish teacher entered the room and went to grab her bags. She looked like she was going to have a mental breakdown. She told the substitute that we weren't to do anything, so it was a study hall, and then she left. I brought it up to my friend that if Jay really did have a gun and no one had spoken up, we could have easily been killed. Fast forward again to the next day in 6th period. Our teacher told us that the previous morning 4 cops with bulletproof gear and guns had come into her room, grabbed Jay, and searched through his bag. They pulled him out of the room in 3 minutes without saying a word, but in the end, he didn't have a gun. Thinking about it though, it's scary how close our tables are. If he had brought a gun, he would have been just out of harm's reach, and I could have easily been shot along with my friends. For me, it's a haunting reminder that even in a small school, bad things can still happen. What's up, guys? Blue Spooky here, as always. I just wanted to thank you guys so much for watching. We just recently passed 10,000 subscribers, which is super awesome. This weekend I'll be working on an update video to announce the 10,000 subscriber Q&A, and I'll probably be writing a few personal stories to share with you guys on a new True Scary Story video. Thank you to all of you subscribers and viewers who sent in stories for me to read this video. I appreciate it very much. I've left out last names for anonymity's sake, but if you'd like me to change the way you're credited in the description, just send me a message and let me know, and I'll go ahead and change it. If you guys liked the video, please feel free to leave a comment below, and perhaps like and share if you feel so inclined. If you have any personal stories that you'd like me to read, or that you'd like to send in, please feel free to take a look in the description below. There will be a link to all of my social media, including my Gmail, Facebook, and Twitter. Go ahead and send me a message on any of those, and I'll try to include your story in a video as soon as possible. If you do decide to send in a story, please feel free to include in the header what the type of story is, and also how you would like to be credited if the story is read in a video like this one. If you have any constructive criticism, please feel free to leave it in the comments below, as I'm always looking for new ways to improve the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.